All right, everyone. Welcome to the Delphi podcast. I'm Anil with my co-host, Jose. It's also from the Delphi digital team. Today, we have a very special guest, billionaire startup founder, Dallas Mavericks owner, and everyone's favorite shark on Shark Tank, Mark Cuban. How you doing, Mark?
Good, guys. How y'all doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. Really excited to have this conversation. You've been on a bunch of crypto podcasts over the past few months anyway, so we just wanted to kind of get right to it, not waste anyone's time.
Yeah.
So, given your experience, living and thriving through the internet revolution, right? We'd like to spend some of our conversation digging into the similarities between and differences between this and crypto right now. So, you famously saw the opportunity computers and the internet presented very early on. And, obviously starting and exiting broadcast.com, micro solutions. You also saw these other tech trends pretty early. Having lived and thrived through these previous technological revolutions, like how do you feel crypto compares to this, and like what stage are we at right now?
Well, it's not really crypto, right? It's because crypto's been around and it's analogous to what the internet was like. Crypto's kind of like the Department of Defense internet, right? In the 60s and 70s, where there were very specific applications. What really changed everything was smart contracts, right? Because that's what gave it some intelligence. You could always, with Bitcoin, you could do transfers and that was great, right? And it was a store of value and that was awesome. It's a better alternative to gold, which is phenomenal, right? It's taking money away from gold and it's going to continue. And that's why I own Bitcoin, right? And why I never sold any. But that's one thing. That's not really where it compares to the internet. Where it compares to the internet is when the internet started to happen, you started seeing all these applications that could disrupt things that happened in the analog world. Like when we looked at streaming, because I wanted to listen to Indiana University basketball, I couldn't do it on the radio in Dallas, right? If the game wasn't on, literally we would buy a 6-pack or maybe a case and get some of my buddies, and we would put a speakerphone on a table, and then somebody in Bloomington, Indiana would put a radio next to a speakerphone, right? And then, I'd done networking with my first company, Micro Solutions, and we were one of the first local area and wide area network integrators, wrote distributed database applications. And so when the internet came along, it was like, all right, this is just a connected database where you can just, bits are bits, right? They don't care what they are and where they go. But it wasn't decentralized, everything was centralized. And so, we had, for AudioNet that turned into broadcast.com, we had a server farm, right? We had thousands of servers and everything was centralized. And bandwidth was a limiting factor. Now, fast forward 25 years and you're going to whatever, how many years, but now you look at what's happening and you saw smart contracts come along and you saw some of the ICO phrase in 2017, but then, more and more applications came along and they became more prevalent and more accessible. And that created DeFi and that created NFTs. But the smart contracts and the fact that they're decentralized and have, there's no one in charge, right? The governance is completely different. That's what changed the game. So now you can look at things and say, any business where there's friction created, A, because it's centralized, or B, because decision-making is centralized, either the data centralized or decisions centralized, it's going to be disrupted. They're fucked, right? And so that's what got me excited. So it went from, could you take something that was analog and make it digital? That's what got the internet going. And that's where all those applications came from. And when you made them digital, you centralized them because, that's where you could get, the benefit of scale. Now you look at it and you say, decentralization's dead, right? Because bandwidth isn't expensive. Storage is not expensive. We're used to free Gmail, free this, free that, right? Those costs are negligible. And so now then, if you can start adding decentralization and governance and intelligence with smart contracts, the applications are through the roof and you can do almost everything. And so that's why it's a lot like the internet.
I'm just curious, when did you first realize that? Because I know you were sort of, I guess, not so positive on Bitcoin, or it still aren't as a currency, right? Which we really right. we aren't much either. But when did you start to sort of see the store of value thesis, and then when did you see the smart contract stuff? Because you were involved in 2017, but I guess recently you seem to really have gone down the rabbit hole.
So yeah, so here's what happened. So the early days of Bitcoin, 2012 and everything, right? Which I guess isn't early. It's not 2009, but people are like, it's a currency, and it's like guys were going across the country showing they could do everything they wanted, only spending Bitcoin. And I'm like, it's just not going to work. It's too hard, right? It's too slow. There's a limit on the number of transactions. Then you get to 2017 and there's all the forks and there's all the decision making. There's all the arguments about block size, and it's still not a currency. But the entire time I said it was a store of value, where if you could get people to believe that it was a better alternative than gold, then because there's it's algorithmic scarcity, the price is going to go up like anything else. Whether it's a share of stock that's scarce, whether it's a baseball card that's scarce, or whether it's Bitcoin, they all share the same principle. If there's more buyers than sellers and there's enough holders, the price is going up. So that store of value concept I was always positive on, going back before 2017. I just got into it with the whole banana thing over the utility of Bitcoin, because I just didn't see it as a currency, and I still don't. That does, but I own it. Then when you get to 2017 and the ICO started to happen, that was the tokenization side and some smart contracts. But it's only over the last 3 years when some of the standards really started to happen, where you got 720, 721, et cetera, all the ERCs. That's really what got my interest. And then what really propelled me down the rabbit hole, I went to mintable.app because I just wanted to learn more about NFTs. And as I was looking at it, there was one little data field that said royalty percentage. And I was like, what the fuck? I mean, I'm like, are you serious? Like, if I create something and digitize it and it gets resold in an after sale, I get to keep royalty? All bets are off. This is a game changer. And then as I started and that got me to, start digging into Solidity and understanding smart contracts and the fields and the capabilities of smart contracts. That got me into layer 1, which helped me understand the scalability of different blockchains and why people are creating, competitors to Ethereum. Layer 2 and the difference between rollups and, sharding and this and that. And so that introduction to minting and the capabilities of a smart contract, and that's what got me there. And then learning everything else and governance and everything else, that's what got me super excited and kept me there.
And what was the moment like when you dove back in recently, out of curiosity?
That was it. That was,
okay,
when I went on Mintable. And so
that's cool.
I went on Mintable. It's only been January, right? Maybe December, and it was January. And once I saw the royalties, which got me into smart contracts, and fully understanding smart contracts, and that got me into Solidity and understanding how simple, relatively speaking, it is to program this shit. I was like, okay, this is a game changer. This changes everything, because that decentralization and the fact that that smart contract can control everything that happens in a transaction or a process, that, knowing what I know about business, putting my Shark Tank hat on, it was like, okay, this is crazy. This is really going to change the game.
Yeah, your learning curve's been insane, and we'll dig into that. But just wanted to move back to sort of the comparisons between the .com bubble and this. And obviously,
Sure.
like you were super early there. You had the systems integrator, Micro Solutions, and then you had broadcast.com later. And I'm curious, like you kind of went through all the pain points of setting up the internet and how hard it was, the UX and all of that. Like, what point do you think we're at right now with crypto in comparison? Like, if you had to put it like
it's
a year,
proof of concept right now. It's still proof of concept. So everybody's seeing, you're not seeing a ton of unique business applications, right? What you're seeing is the NFT market really showing people how smart contracts work. And you're seeing different versions of NFTs, whether it's Flow and Top Shots versus, Beeple, and, but it's not really, no one's in there doing insurance claim applications, right? I've seen, one brilliant application of smart contracts for insurance for farmers, where they take oracles for precipitation and for weather, for the National Weather Service, and continuously monitor them based off of location. And the farmer can say, okay, how much is it to buy insurance for X number of dollars in the event I get more than X amount of rain, or the temperature falls below a certain number, because that damages my crops. And then the smart contract automatically pays it, right? There's no going to an insurance company and bitching and moaning to get your money back or get paid. and that kind of stuff hasn't really started yet. You know, that's the only true example I've seen there. So just like in the early days of the internet, like we would stream Chicago Cubs games. And back then in 95 and 96, in order to be able to stream, and we called it internet broadcasting then, a Cubs game, and back then the Cubs played almost all their games, actually all their games during the day. So if you were stuck in the office, the only way that you could listen, if you were a Cubs fan, was to stream. Now, in order to be able to stream, you had to have a PC, you had to have a 56K modem or connection to your corporate internet. You had to get through the firewall. You had to have a TCP IP client. You had to have a media player, and you had to have all those things working together through a browser that had.
When was that? What year was that?
95 and 96.
Okay.
Right. So the hassles were through the roof, just like they are now. You got to figure out what a mask is, or what a wallet is, rather, like MetaMask. You got to figure out that, you know, other than a couple places like Nifty and Top Shots, that you've got to set up a wallet. You got to get money into the wallet. You got to figure out where it's being custodied, right? And then you've got to figure out when you're trying to buy something and the price is in Ethereum, what that actually means. And if you're just coming in buying, that's the biggest pain in the ass on the universe, right? And that's one of the reasons Top Shots has done so well, because it's like buying a pair of socks. You just put in your credit card, you pick the socks, and you get them. And now getting your money out is a different issue, but that's a topic for another conversation. But that's really, you know, the analogy. It was a hassle at the beginning back then, but I knew over time it'd get easier. And, you know, year by year, we added new features and it got simpler. We added video, the video got better in quality. And the same thing will happen here. All those pain points and all the resistance points that you face now are going to disappear, because everybody knows they're the problems and everybody's working on them.
Now that's great. I guess, you know, on a little bit of a tangent, like you bought a ton of puts to hedge, you know, the Yahoo stock you received in exchange for your broadcast.com, which was obviously, you know, one of the greatest, you know, trades of all time. Like at that time, like, you know, what made you do that? You know, obviously did people think that was like a crazy move because everyone was in this like up only market? And how does that compare to the valuations right now?
I remember going on CNBC right after I said that I'd done that, and Yahoo stock, you know, we got paid in stock, had gone up like a lot, right? And one of the guys on CNBC in the morning goes, "Don't you feel stupid, you know, that you left, you know, these hundreds of millions of dollars on the table?" And I go, "You know what? I'm sitting in my G5. I don't feel real stupid at all right now." But to answer your question, like after I sold my first company, Micro Solutions, I was 29, and I initially decided that I was going to invest like an old man, right? Because I needed to save all this money for retirement, because I retired. I bought a lifetime pass in American Airlines and just traveled and partied like a rock star. My goal was to have drinks with as many people around the world as I possibly could. And I got really, really good at it. And then the guy I used as a broker would call me all the time, asking me questions about technology companies, because as a systems integrator, I installed all these different bridges and routers and all these, you know, local and wide area networking products and softwares, and I knew them intimately. And they would ask me a question. Then the next thing you know, I'd see it on CNBC where the analyst that covered that stock for the broker was talking and saying the exact same thing I said. And my broker was like, "You got to buy or short these stocks because you know them better than our analysts." So I started doing that and was just crushing it. I was making 80+% a year. Started a hedge fund that I sold within 90 days using my trading path. It was great, right? And so when you asked about, you know, why did I hedge? I had seen stocks go straight up and straight down. You know, PC software stocks, PC stocks, wide area and local area networking companies. Their stocks went bam, they were hot, and then they weren't. And I'm like, look, I got a B next to my name. I never imagined in my wildest dreams that would ever happen. I don't need to get greedy. Let's just lock it in and be happy about it. And that's why.
And was there something in the market that sort of like gave you that feeling? Obviously you've been through it before, and like, how does that compare to what you see right now and how you think about like valuation
totally
of crypto
different
right now?
Yeah, okay. Totally different, right? So for me, it was just a matter of not being greedy. How much money do you need? You know, I mean, it was nothing more than that. But in terms of now, with crypto, there's no algorithmic scarcity in stocks. There should be, right? But there's not. Companies can keep on issuing stocks forever and a day, and they do. right? And then they'll buy back shares of stock to try to balance it. So they're not, so there's all kinds of games that get played in the stock market. But effectively, if I took, and I wrote this on my blog, blogmaverick.com 15 years ago, at least, where I said, if I put a share of stock that does not pay a dividend on my desk, and I put a baseball card on my desk, they're both basically the same thing. They're stores of value that they're worth what somebody will pay for it, right? There's no one, it doesn't really matter how the company performs as long as they don't go out of business. It just matters what somebody will pay for it. Everybody was like, you're an idiot. That's just wrong. That's just wrong. But I'm like, crypto's the same way, right? It's supply and demand. Only with shares of stock, you can buy shares in some companies where they'll just keep on issuing stock day after day after day, right? And diluting everybody. And you see this with startups too, right? Go invest in a startup, and you invest X amount on Shark Tank, right? Friday nights on ABC. You invest X amount on a company in Shark Tank. Then they do another raise. Then they do another raise, and you start off with 10%. Then you're down to 2%. And so with crypto, if they have inflation, pretty much in most cases what the inflation is going to be, or if it's going to change like 1559, what's going to happen, and the process. You don't have that with shares of stock. And so in a lot of cases, as long as you understand what you're getting into with crypto, then you're okay, right? But where they're very similar is the hype factor, because the early, the internet stocks, there were people who didn't have any clue what they were buying. I remember when we went on a roadshow for broadcast.com, and we were trying to explain the whole concept of streaming. And literally we'd get questions are like, so you have CD players, one for every listener or viewer, you have a DVD? No, and most of them did not understand what we were saying at all. They understood it so little that Todd Wagner, my partner, and I would like laugh at each other and switch up our presentation so it made no sense at all, and nobody would catch it. And everybody who came to these meetings bought every share of stock that they could get, and it was the biggest one-day IPO rise in the history of the stock market at the time. And so people didn't understand the internet stocks back then, and that's part of what came back to bite them. And so with Bitcoin, where it's like digital gold, only a store of value, doesn't pretend to be anything else, that's great. That's why I own Bitcoin. With Ethereum, where it's kind of, what's the right word? It's fungible, right? It's changing, it's adaptable over time. And you're seeing that going to 2.0 and 1559 and all these Ethereum improvement proposals. That is more lifelike. And so I have a lot of Ethereum as well. I wish I had bought it sooner, but I started buying it 4 years ago, simply because I think it's as close as we have to a true currency, right? And then there's all these other tokens that have stories about them where the hype factor is really high, and you really have to understand, what the transactions are. But the one enormous difference is, I can look at the volume of a stock on the stock market, but I get so much more transparent data with blockchains, right? And tokens that you didn't have with stocks. Like you look at what happened with GameStop. You don't know immediately what the float is. You don't know immediately what the short, the number of shares short is. There's a lot of data that isn't available to everybody. And so that's a significant difference. But, hype is high, so you have to be really careful with both. And so I wouldn't tell it, like I had a kid ask me the other day, stocks or crypto. I'm like, well, depends which one you know better. And you just have to be able to put the hype aside and really make an effort to understand and learn. But at least with crypto, you can go, like with you guys, and look at research and understand what's going on more than, and in some cases, there's more information with crypto than it is with stocks because of blockchains.
Absolutely. And before you mentioned sort of the pains of using the internet 95, 96, and that we're at a similar sort of proof of concept stage with crypto, do you buy that like every new technology or like technological revolution, like Carlota Perez style, needs this hype cycle to fund it? And do you think we're like pre-hype cycle, or do you think that this is the hype cycle?
So okay. there's going to be multiple hype cycles, right? So there's the hype cycle with NFTs, and we've already had the hype cycle in 2017 for Bitcoin and Ethereum, right? And then we had a hype cycle with ICOs, and that was very informative because people recognize that there's risk associated with it. And now with smart contracts and NFTs, it's a hype cycle again, but each hype cycle is also educational. And there's people who are going to make money and lose money in each of them, but it becomes the platform for the next layer, the next level. So with NFTs, we haven't seen the business applications yet, but we will, right? And the business applications aren't going to be hype. They'll just be business applications. And I'll give you a perfect example. Cliff Notes. Every kid has used Cliff Notes at some point or another, right? There's no reason why Cliff Notes should primarily be sold as a physical book for whatever the price is. That should be digital. And when you're done with it, because it's effectively perishable, you should resell it to the next kid, and the original author should get their 10, 15, 25% royalties, right? That's the beauty of an NFT in a business application. So we have the hype cycle now that allows people to understand it via what we're seeing today. But once you get into and understand it, those same people are like myself are going to say, here's the business application. Then you'll start seeing the business applications, and there'll be a hype cycle there where everybody's coming in and saying, I'm competing with DocuSign. There's no good reasons to have them in a centralized database to do what they're doing when it could be all burned to, Ethereum or whatever blockchain. And then people will come back and say, well, no, it won't work because of gas fees. And then somebody will say, well, E2.0 will take care of that. And there's layer 2 solutions that'll take care of that, and yada, yada, yada. And that'll have its own little hype cycle for applications.
Yeah, so I guess, with the advent of the internet, right, people had to come up with new ways to think about value capture and, how to value companies. And, initially Google, Facebook, Amazon, these companies never looked good by traditional metrics. And, investors kind of scoffed at the idea of like eyeballs as a metric. And at the same time, there were a lot of bullshit metrics like enterprise value per user and things like that. You're seeing that in crypto right now too, right? Whether it's like, total value lock, TVL, because it, vastly differs between protocols. Like, how are you looking at these metrics? Like, which ones are real to you? Which ones are fake?
So that's a great question. We'll go back to the early days of the internet, right? People used hits. Now, what's a hit, right? Back in the day, a hit was just on your server, right? On your web server, it would show up as a line in your logs, right? And so it was easy for someone to say, oh yeah, for my website, we got 10 million hits. Now, 9,900,000 of them were just graphic files that were loading when they kept on hitting refresh every time, right? And everybody talked about hits. It was the most meaningless data point ever. TVL is the same thing, right? And you're seeing a lot of that now because, you've got just a few people that go around, not just a few, but there's some number of people that go around bouncing around searching for years, knowing that if they're big enough money and they're if they're big enough money and they're willing to move and keep their money there for a little while, the need for an LP, the liquidity provider, is enormous, right? So they'll pay almost any price to get them. And you start seeing those statistics gamed, right? So if I pay somebody a $6 zillion% yield, right, for some period of time, so that my total value locked is $50 million over the weekend, that makes me look like a badass, right? So that must mean everybody else is going to follow them in. And to a certain extent it is, but then all of a sudden you realize the tokens that you're getting to pay for that are just shit, right? And there's no liquidity, or you end up having to pay for that on the back end by making it almost a stable coin for some period of time, where you're putting up dollars to make sure that that money that you gave the whale actually can be converted to, something of value. And so there's all these games being played. It's the same with transactions per second with blockchains, right? And side chains and everything else. It's just like, let me game this thing so that I can say that my transactions per second are way up here and Ethereum's down here and everybody else is in between. So that's another way the game is being played. And then users the same way, right? And just like apps used to talk about downloads, or podcast talks about downloads. Just because you download a podcast does not mean you're going to listen to it. Even if you start to listen to it, doesn't mean you're going to listen to it for more than 3 minutes. And you probably don't even get through the commercials in the front of the podcast. And so there's, in any new industry, any new marketplace, everybody looks for the parameters that bring more excitement to them, because those are great marketing points to talk about. And then you get to go and do all the interviews and say, look, my TPS or my TVL or my LPs or my this or my that, right? That's just the way the game is played. But then eventually you have to deliver. And what you're selling has to be real and authentic and work. And as those things happen, the game players will fall off, particularly in DeFi, because, you know, it's great to say that you're doing a 300% APY until someone tries to sell those tokens and the real APY doesn't cover your gas.
Yeah, it's a great point. And there's kind of two sides to that, right? Because people also make crypto look really small by referring to sort of user numbers, right? And then the opposite with TVL, where they make it look much more impressive than it is by referring to TVL. So I'm just curious, like, what specific metrics do you look at, or what are you digging into?
The number of users is tiny, and that's a good thing, right? So like if you go to Dapper, if you like, I just invested what has been announced here, Crypto Slam, right? And so yeah, so you go on Crypto Slam and you see the total number of buyers and you see the total number of transactions for whatever, whether it's CryptoPunks, whether it's Dapper with Top Shots, and you see the numbers relatively tiny in the bigger scheme of things. It's great for them and it's growing for sure, but you know, 300,000 transactions or, you know, 125,000 buyers, whatever it may be, that's tiny, but that's a beautiful thing, right? Because it means there's a whole lot more people to bring in as customers, and eventually you will. And so those are the types of metrics that, to answer, I didn't really answer, but so I go to Crypto Slam and I don't look at TVL at all. That's meaningless to me. And in terms of DeFi, I don't pay that much attention to any specific parameter. I look to see whoever's issuing the token, what business they're in, and is it good? So, you know, I own some Aave because I think a decent amount of Aave because I think they're a great platform. And so that's what I look at. What is the business? I put on my Shark Tank hat on Friday nights on ABC, and I say, you know, what is their business, and is it a valid business?
Yeah, no, we love the Aave team. And I had one I'm curious about. You've obviously had like a lot of famous hits, the internet and broadcast.com, HDTV. I'm curious if there are any trends, early tech trends that you were kind of early to that didn't pan out, and kind of like, what are the signs that you look for to see whether something is panning out according to your thesis, or were you, when you got this excited about something, was it always sort of like, you know, already, did it always make it kind of thing?
It always made it. I might not have been the one who made the money on it though. So I was one of the first to do local area networking. I made money on that. Wide area networking, I wasn't the first. Streaming, I had the first all high definition TV network. We did the first day and date releases, and that was 15 years ago. And we made okay amount of money, but not like they're doing now. That all just changed over the pandemic. What other shit? I mean, lots of stuff in basketball with analytics and other stuff. But you know, it's like AI is a perfect example, right? AI is going to change everything, but AI is very broad and it's not easy to learn, right? And within companies, there are AI haves and AI have-nots. And literally, the only companies I'll invest in the stock market are companies that are great at AI. And so that's something where I haven't started a company because I'm not smart enough. I haven't dug in enough to, you know, I'm creating, you know, my best bet is a 3-layer neural network in JavaScript. You know, I'm not, you know, doing, you know, GPT-3 and, you know, 6 billion, you know, variables and crazy stuff like that. So I never really got the chance to monetize it within the AI space because it just blew by me too fast and I was too late. But, you know, one of the interesting things, I tried to look to see if there's any overlaps between what's happening with AI and just the nonstop, you know, advancements there versus DeFi and other places. And you see it in a certain extent just because AI is always used with financial instruments, right? So it's used to arb everything. It's used to hedge everything. Everybody comes in, there's high frequency trading, and it's, you know, but it's not all that big yet because there's still, when you look across all the different dexes, the delta in pricing is enormous, right? Relatively speaking. And so we haven't seen that pure HF, high frequency trading hit yet, but somebody's out there making a shitload of money off of it. between hedging and everything and using AI and using, being a quant and using NLP to look for triggers, there's still going to be money made there. And I just am not smart enough to fully take advantage of it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I guess jumping off that, like, what is your methodology for learning about a new space? Like, I think everyone, on our team and even the crypto community in general is just like, holy shit, Mark Cuban is like, not only, dipped his toes in, he's like fully into the space. You're almost like a pirate, just like us now, right? Like,
yeah.
How much % of your time are you spending on crypto?
A lot.
Where are you looking other than, annoying emails from me sending you our research reports?
No, I love your research reports, by the way. They're really good.
No, appreciate that. Yeah, but
so here's what I do. Here's what I do. So first of all, people don't realize I wrote software for 7 years in my first company. I taught myself to code. I had some basic stuff, but for the most part, I taught myself to code, and I did mostly database applications. And I did integration of database applications so that, I worked with a company like Zales Jewelry, and back then, they kept their watches in a safe. And so I got these old things called target boards that would take pictures, not even videos, and take those pictures and put them, use an API to put them in a database, put that database so that it could scale into multiple locations. And this is back in the 80s before you motherfuckers were even born, right? And so, and then I got into wide area networks, and then I did the whole streaming thing. And, and I also, did applications like Lotus Notes and did custom work there. And that was all distributed database stuff as well. So getting into crypto, and blockchain, it's the same stuff, only better. So I have all the fundamental understanding there, and I haven't programmed in a long time, but I took my Coursera Python class, right? And I did some basic Python things, and I took machine learning tutorials on AWS, and I've done basic JavaScript neural networks to learn. So point being that I had enough of a foundation that I don't have to, this stuff isn't foreign to me. And so when I go in and I take a Solidity tutorial that teaches me about zombies, and I understand it all, I don't have to memorize it enough to be able to just write code off the top of my head, but enough that I can go on to Etherscan and look at the contract and say, okay, I understand what's going on here. And then I can take, once I got that, now it's the hard part, like it is for everybody else, is learning the nuanced differences on all these different competitors for everything, right? What does Flow have that's different? What are they doing? What are the economics versus what other people are doing? What is Near versus Matic / Polygon, versus pick any, pick any blockchain. So I just dig in there and I'll read their white papers, and you don't have to read the whole white paper. You just have to read the parts that are different, right? And that's what I'll do. I'll just sit there and I'll read the stuff because it's all the same, just nuanced, just different in a little way, right? And so you just have to be able to identify the little differences. And NFT is just, learning those. The smart contracts are straightforward. I know digital bits are bits, and I know business, and I know marketplaces. So pulling all those things together was all really straightforward and fast.
Yeah, I think you put it beautifully. Where crypto, like, when we first started Delphi a few years ago, what excited us was there were no experts in this space yet, right? And
right.
You can't just come from finance and immediately become an expert. You can come from wherever. How do you find time to juggle that with all your other responsibilities, right? Like
I spend a good 3 hours a day,
Nice.
a day, 4 hours a day reading this shit. I may be laying in bed at 2 o'clock in the morning. Okay, someone's talking about this, or there's this new layer 2. And what's the difference between roll-ups and sharding and multi processor approaches, and and then doing interviews like this where you just pick up little bits and pieces, right, based off the questions you get asked, and all that just comes together because I've been doing this. I was an integrator, right? That was my company. We were one of the largest systems integration companies in the country at the time. And so that was my whole job, was to integrate new technologies. And back then it was like, it wasn't just Ethernet was the dominant. There was Token Ring, which was a deterministic, ArcNet, Ethernet, all these different varieties. There wasn't just one Ethernet operating system. It was Banyan. We were the largest reseller there. It was Microsoft. At one point, we were the largest Token Ring reseller for IBM. It was, all these different networking protocols. And so if you understand the different layers of networking, Crypto is relatively easy, and so
Yeah.
you just get in there and you learn it, and you see the similarities across all the platforms.
Yeah, I guess like, you have so many, you must have a bunch of different friends that are asking you, what the fuck is going on here in crypto, etc. How do you even explain something like that to them? Like, you have your friend, Mr. Wonderful, who flip-flops on Bitcoin every few months nowadays.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call him a friend. No, I like Kevin. He's a good dude. Yeah, Kevin's all about just making money, right? If bananas were worth more than Bitcoin because there was a run on bananas, he'd be all about bananas. But in terms of explaining it to friends, particularly with NFTs, all I'm saying is that there's always value for digital content. Intellectual property always has value. The question becomes, how can you sell it and resell it? And the only thing that's really changed is the fact that with smart contracts, there's nobody in charge of it effectively, right? And so it makes it very, very simple for anybody to put something into the market to see if there's value. And right now, the only friction are the gas fees, but you can use like Mintable.app and it's gasless, and others, have similar solutions. And so you can dip your toe in the water doing a gasless approach, and it takes 15 minutes to put something out there to see if there's value. Now, if you find something with value, then the question becomes, will it be resold or not? And what I explained to them is, this is the first time you can earn royalties forevermore. And that alone is the ultimate game changer, and so I forget what the EIP is for the changes. So it's multi-featured royalties, but that's just going to advance. So whether it's music or business white papers. So, I mean, for you guys, for Delphi, for your research, right? You're going to end up putting your stuff out there as a NFT because it's perishable, right? Once you read it effectively, okay, I read it, I've consumed the knowledge. I don't need to go back and look at it again 20 times. Let me sell it to the next person. You set the royalty at 50%. And so the real question becomes, why haven't you done that yet? Because from you guys where you are with your knowledge to getting to that point, that's the bridge we have to cross to make all the applications really work for business. Once you figure that out, that is your holy grail, right? Because you try to get subscribers and you try to get people to really respect your research and see value in it. And what they pay you versus what they receive in value and what they can earn from that is how you try to price things. But not everybody needs the immediacy of it. It might be, it's perishable to that trader or whatever. And so if you let that person resell it and you put in there at 50% or 75%, because whatever they keep is found money for them that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And students or whatever else, people who are, last of the game or buying it, that's the application bridge. And that's the business process bridge we have to cross in order for NFTs to take their next step, because then you're just talking about business applications. So I'll turn it out to you guys. Why are you not selling your research as an NFT?
I think you're jumping the gun here. You're leaking some secrets already, Mark.
But you see what I'm saying, right? Your subscriber has a token and you check the wallet. And if you have a subscriber token in your wallet, then, you get it for free. And if not, whatever, right?
Yep.
And then once it's past a certain date, it's resellable, and not all smart contracts, are going to be transferable like that across all marketplaces. But that's part of the goal as well, because royalties aren't necessarily all transferable from marketplace to marketplace. Not all contracts have standards, but that's part of the goal, for all of business that wants to push crypto forward. And so to me, that's part of the value that you guys can bring. And I know I'm going all Shark Tank on you here, but but you see my point, right? Yeah, you see my point.
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking into a lot of stuff like that, but won't leave too much alpha right now. I'm curious. So with all the work you've done, like all the hours you spent researching this stuff, like high level and both high level and low level, like what's your thesis for this space? Like, what are you most excited about? You've just gone into NFTs, which is an area we're super excited about as well. Other than that, like what are you most excited about? And then like low level, what projects are you interested in? I mean, you don't have to mention names, but like just areas.
Well, just what I just talked about. Cool. What we just talked about. right? How do you change the nature of subscriptions is one area that I'm interested in. So how do you take NFTs and apply them to new businesses so that you can disrupt them? That's everything right now. You know, whether it's you guys with subscriptions. So if you're able to come up with a better solution to make it easier for you to sell, like I'll give you an example, you know, with the Mavs, we're trying to find a good option for turning our tickets into NFTs. And we want to be able to find ways, you know, so that not only can our consumers or our fans buy tickets and resell them, but we continue to make royalty money on them. And that's simple in concept, but because there's so many other elements that Mavs fans are used to getting when they get season tickets. But what happens a lot is, you know, out of 40 in a traditional season, out of 41 home games before playoffs, we may have, there's one or two high demand games. And there's a lot of season ticket holders that'll sell those one or two games to try to pay for their whole season ticket package, right? How do we balance all those things to maximize our revenue and maximize the value for season ticket holders as well? Those types of market analysis and business process optimization things is exactly what I'm focused on right now, because once you can start solving that, so if you guys solve the optimization of the subscription play, right, for research, and you're able to productize that, you win. You know, fuck Delphi Digital, right? If you're able to productize that, you know, that's a win across the board. And so just like when I looked at Indiana basketball and streaming and said, oh, this isn't just Indiana basketball, this is about, you know, bits are bits. And if I can transport, you know, multimedia bits to people around the world just got a lot smaller, and there's a huge business here. And I remember 3-4 months into our business, sitting in front of, you know, our 10 employees or whatever, saying, if we make this shit work, we're all going to be fucking rich. And out of 330 employees, when we sold, 300 became millionaires, and 100 plus had more than 10 million. You guys are in the same boat. If you can, and that's the type of thing I try to work on. What are applications that this new technology can turn upside down so that I can disrupt an industry and make a fuckload of money, right? And so now I'm not as concerned about the fuckload of money, but you guys should be, right? And that is the opportunity that I look for. How do you disrupt industries using this new technology? Because nobody sees it coming. Banking's already done, right? You already know banking is going to be turned upside down, because, you know, all the industries, and stop me if I'm going too far afield, but all the industries that are built on trust and look at me, I'm smarter than you, are going to have problems. You know, every mid to big size city, one of the 3 largest buildings are banking buildings, right? And all those people in that building are there to try to make it look like the bank of whatever is smarter than you, and you need them in order to transact your money. And you should still give us your money, even though we only pay you 0.02% interest on your savings account. And no matter how much you save, you're only going to make $20 over the next 10 years. And so, you know, those types of businesses built purely on trust, blockchain is designed to disrupt. And so I spend my time thinking, okay, how can I fuck them up?
Yeah.
And knowing that if they're going to be fucked up, one, don't invest in them, you know, don't get caught down that rabbit hole thinking, you know, because I get hit up all the time. Let's get a bank and we'll go digital. So we went from old school banking to fintech to distributed banking, where everything in a bank is an API, and that's relatively new, to blockchain-based DeFi. And DeFi won't be the end all, right? There's going to be something that supersedes DeFi, because DeFi is still too complicated. You know, my first DeFi transaction, I spent more on gas than I earned on the APY, right? You know, because you don't realize it until it's too late. And you know, at least I didn't. And so those are the types of things I look at.
Yeah, I guess like, you know, speaking about disrupting industries, like obviously, you know, one thing that you kind of like, you know, put into everyone's minds over, you know, these seasons of Shark Tank is just how important kind of a founder being so passionate about what they're working on and just, you know, being balls to the walls. one thing that I think, we can confidently say, talking to so many teams in crypto, is that, no one in crypto, sleeps, right? Like we all are just 24/7 working on the vision, the mission. How have you been talking to crypto founders? Like, what do you, look for in a
Not
crypto
enough, right?
founder?
I've only been doing this hardcore a couple months, right?
Yeah.
And before I can talk to a crypto founder, I have to know my shit. Otherwise I'm just some dude trying to, some rich guy that, is trying to get involved in something they don't understand. I got to be able to walk in and have them realize I'm doing the work. And so I, like you guys, and I've talked to a bunch, but the hard part is just hiring people. You guys, because anybody who knows crypto has already made a shitload of money over the past 6 months, and they don't want to work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And given the open source nature of crypto, like, how do you think about like moats and going back to value capture there as well? Like that's a $1 trillion question on everyone's mind right now.
Yeah, it just depends on what application. It really depends on what you're trying to do. So on layer 4, you can build moats. Layer 2, if there's this race between building layer 2 layer 2 protocols and solutions versus ETH 2.0, right? And what will ETH 2.0 enable that these layer 2 solutions are trying to overcome, right? Transactions, et cetera. And are they short-term or long-term solutions? But I just dig in, right? And I just try to go out there, and the more I learn, the more opportunities that come to mind, and the more I can go after. And then it's just trying to pick my spots. But to your question about moats, it just depends on the application. What I don't think is a moat that everybody's pegging to is transactions per second. That's short-term and short-sighted. TVL, that's short-term and short-sighted. Number of users, that's short-term, maybe not 100% short-term. That's more valued if you can retain them, right? Because like MetaMask, like Coinbase charges 4% on their transactions. It's ridiculous, right? But it's sticky because it's geared towards people that don't know that they're getting charged 4%. Like I just created something a week ago, 6 days ago. It's an app called lazy.com, right? So if you just want to demo, if you own NFTs and there's really no way to show them, right? And so I created lazy.com. You go there, you sign up, and you connect your wallet, and it just very simply just gives you a URL so if you go to lazy.com/mcuban, for that wallet, it shows all my NFTs. And I put that URL into my Instagram bio, into my Twitter bio, at the bottom of my SIG for my email. And so if you want to know what NFTs I own, because I'm sick of being asked about it, bam, there it is. And we'll start adding more and more features. And in 6 days, we've had 50,000 users, give or take, which is crazy, because all I did was tweet about it a couple of times. But there's plenty of opportunity there. You just got to know what substance and what shit.
That's awesome. And do you see like because with the internet, there was a lot of value in like owning the customer, right? Like people who own the customer could then just like integrate backwards and own everything else. Do you think there's some of that with
Yeah,
crypto?
of course.
Like,
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But when you do that, right? So my kind of rule of thumb for any business always has been, how do I kick my own ass, and how is everybody else trying to kick my ass? And so if you're continuously improving, then you can keep those customers. But you always have to be the path of least resistance. It's like wallets. Wallets are awful. People like MetaMask because once you figure it out, it's not so bad, right? But figuring out a wallet, period, is the worst thing ever. Trying to buy your initial crypto is the worst thing ever. The fact that other than on Flow and Nifty Gateway, that you have to do things on crypto first, and so you have to buy crypto before you buy something else, is the worst thing ever. It should be like buying socks. So you might have a big customer base, but if your solution is not this path of least resistance and low friction, someone's going to kick your ass. And so you've got to anticipate that, because every marketplace that I talk to, everybody who's trying to sell NFTs in any way, shape, or form, everybody's trying to come up with a solution that is more like Nifty and Top Shots, Dapper, where either you do the KYC after the fact, but it's an NFT is like buying a pair of socks on Amazon. You just put in your credit card, you get it, bam, you don't have to think twice. But just because you own a customer now, like Nifty and Top Shot, doesn't mean they're not going to be superseded by something better. And so they have to keep on improving. Otherwise, they're not going to retain those customers.
Yeah, I guess
That
if,
makes sense.
if we came to you in 5 years and said crypto had failed, right? And in this hypothetical, we can pretend that Bitcoin stays its digital gold, but like, what would you think is like the main reason for that?
There was something better. There was something better, right? So for instance, let's just say if I was going to try to fuck up Bitcoin, then I would have to have a 25-year plan or a 20-year plan. It wouldn't be a 1 or 5-year plan. And let's just start saying I started seeding. I created a free wallet equivalent for every person in the United States and every person born in the United States going forward. And I just made it available to everybody. Just come claim it, right? Show me your social security card in a picture. We'll put it on, not an Ethereum blockchain, but a unique blockchain that, let's say, we created from open source. And every, for certain things that you do, I'm going to deposit a token in your account. And if you just do these things, you graduate from first grade, you get a token. You graduate from second grade, you pass this reading test that I put out there, you get a token. Da, 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 da. And by the time you're 12 years old, you realize you've got hopefully what is, $1,000 worth of tokens, and they still may appreciate. Are you going to care about that token and what it's going to do for you? Or are you going to care about Bitcoin?
That's fair.
Yeah, and particularly if it's algorithmically controlled inflation, where there's no inflation unless somebody's born, right? Or there's no inflation unless the governance, everybody votes on it, whatever it may be, right? And if somebody dies, you burn those coins, right? You don't let them give them away, and you can't spend those coins. You have to hodl them for at least to you're 18 years old or 25 years old or 30 years old, and you're not allowed to borrow against them until you're 21 years old. Right? There's all kinds of things that you can do if you have a long enough term horizon. Now, whether or not those coins end up having value is going to be hard to say. Technology is going to change. What happens with quantum computing? Who knows, right? But there's lots of ways that you could screw it up if you really set your mind to it, but it wouldn't be easy or fast.
Awesome. And like switching gears a bit, coming to the end, I read that one of your favorite books is The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. I don't know that. Yeah, I really like that book as well. And I think a lot of what appeals to me about crypto is also some of the values in that book. And I'm curious if that's some of what like attracts you to this, and also how you see, I guess, like the other side of the coin there in terms of the illegality, the scams, all the bad stuff, or some of the bad stuff that the media talks about with crypto, that in some ways is the other side of the coin of that like liberalism.
Yeah, I don't really connect The Fountainhead to crypto at all. I mean, I liked it not so much because it's this big political theorem type thing, but Howard Rourke was just an ass kicker, right? He was just the guy that was going out there and said, fuck, I don't give a fuck what you think about me. I don't give a fuck what's happening around me. This is my mission. This is my goal. And I'm going to do the work to get there. And if I do the work and you like it, great. If I do the work and you don't like it, shit happens, right? And so it was that personal motivation thing that really got me. And so I don't really connect it to crypto per se, but I get your point, right? There's no government intervention, decentralized, right? But, and it's personal, it's individualized. And so I can definitely see the connection there. What was the second question?
Yeah, like what are your views on the regulatory side?
Oh,
like
the regulatory side. Oh, yeah, the scams.
Like
KYC.
KYC.
Yeah. Look, I don't mind the regulatory stuff at all. The KYC stuff I think is good, right? I don't have a problem with that at all. I can understand why people would, but you need to protect it, and you need to protect people's money. And in terms of scams, there's more scams with cash than anything else. And so, if you add KYC, if you add, allow the AML, the anti-money laundering, I'm good with that, right? Because if you really want this to be ubiquitous, then you got to know who people are, right? There's got to be some identity. And, even with identity, you can create 375 zillion wallets, that, yes, they can try it back to you. But, why and I can understand why people want anonymity, but I'm fine with it because I think it's more important for all of the crypto world to grow.
That's fair. Yeah, I guess, one thing I tweeted out before we, recorded this was that we were going to have you on the pod and that, we'll just have ask you a few questions that people wanted. So we'll do a quick lightning round if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Yeah. So, one question people asked was this guy, Diamond XBT, he asked, what are you farming right now?
I'm not because I just don't have time, right? Because in order to farm, you really have to understand the tokens and what's going on behind them. And so I was in a couple pools and I staked some Aave, and I still have that, but I'm not really farming, searching for a yield because I just don't have time, because you see some of these crazy APYs, but you got to understand what's going on with the token behind it and how they're playing the token economics. So I'm not, and but there are some places where my crypto is being held that I've done deals where I let them loan it out and they pay me a flat APY.
Cool. Yeah, a lot of people asked us because you said you're very familiar with Terra in a tweet, and we had multiple people in our thread asking whether you hold Luna and if you have an investment thesis there or
I don't.
like
I haven't done anything with Luna at all. There's a bunch that I've read up on. The only one, no, I'm not gonna say, because I know what's going to happen to the price the minute I say something, right? And because a lot of these, but there's some I do for fun. There's some I do for experience, because I just want to learn. But there's none that I'm just like all in this, other than Bitcoin and Ethereum, that I look at as being an equivalent investment. But I own probably 10 different tokens. But I'll tell you what I've done is, if I think there's a decent idea, and most of those are really, really cheap at the time when they're first happening, I'll buy 10,000 or 100,000 and spend 50 grand right on it just to have them in case it hits, but none that I'm all in on.
Yeah, I guess jumping off that, like, what is your portfolio breakdown, if you don't mind us asking? Like, you can do it via percentages, right?
Yeah,
like 30%
yeah. So
Bitcoin.
It's probably 60% Bitcoin, 30% Ethereum, and 10% the rest.
Got it. And what's your favorite app in crypto that you've used so far?
I like CryptoSlam. I like Mintable.app. I like Zapper. I like Bitcoin market cap. What's it called? Total market cap. What the hell is it called? It's an app. Total market cap, I think it's called, or crypto. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you here in a second, so they get the credit. Where you?
Is your homepage?
Yeah, it's on my phone. Coin market cap. Yeah.
Coin market cap. And
Coin market cap. And actually, I've used the Exodus wallet, which is not bad. I'm sorry, I used Exodus, which is not bad, and I used Rainbow, which was even better. So I switched from Exodus to Rainbow.
Nice. Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question. And then, last question: when are we getting a Shark Tank episode focused, exclusively on crypto?
I have nothing to do who walks in, but this summer I'll make a point to say we need to do some Shark Tank crypto stuff. I'm sure since it's so hot, they'll bring the producers will bring someone in, but we know nothing about the companies that are coming in until they show up.
I love it. Yeah, Mark, this has been fantastic, man. We really appreciate the time.
No, it's fun. I really enjoyed it. Great questions.
Thanks. Talk soon.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys.